I've been a Mopar fan, collector, whatever, caretaker is what I really like to use the word now, all my life. Here in the South especially, I think, whatever your father drove, whether it was Ford, Chevy, or Dodge, that's pretty much what you were going to drive when you grew up because you just loved it because you got to be there with Dad driving, and my dad bought the 71 Hemi Charger in that car. It's still fun to go drive it because it brings back all those memories of being back in those fun days, as we all call them, the good old days.
In the muscle car world, there are a few collections or museums that really stand out as something special, especially when it comes to the Mopar world. Nothing better represents the golden era performance, more so than the Wellborn Musclecar Museum, Alexander City, Alabama.
We established the muscle car collection because we want to preserve the muscle car heritage.
Walking into the building can be a bit of a sensory overload because you've got world-class collector cars, all with the performance bent to it. But even on top of that, the fact that it's located in a vintage auto dealership and it's decorated with an impressive collection of authentic dealer memorabilia and signs, the trip back in time for sure.
There's only 3 kind of cars I'm going to buy. One is restored by a restorer that I know. 2 would be one that I knew the car well enough that I'm comfortable buying it. And 3, and the most important one to me these days, is a survivor.
Only the absolute best of the best, the cream of the crop, is selected. And this has been learned from years and years of knowledge and research.
We have a parts room here that's full of NOS parts. I mean, you can go in there and pull almost anything you need for a Mopar. If you were to get a car from this collection, from this museum, I assure you it's going to have the NOS parts on it. It gives you that driver experience that if you sit down in a 1970 Charger that's coming out of here and you go down the road and you shift that big pistol grip, it's going to feel and sound just like 1970.
In the Mopar world, there are some cars that are elevated to rock star status. And we know that the one-year-only 1969 Dodge Daytona is one of those. The intent of this car was to make it as competitive as possible on the big super speedways, such as Talladega, just down the road from here, and Daytona, and it worked. All these years later, it's the shock appeal of the styling of the car with the pointed nose, the big rear spoiler, and with only 503 built, you add just how cool these cars are along with the rarity, and you've got an A-list collectible.
This particular one, my brother and I bought it together in 1988. Absolutely rust-free, never wrecked, never damaged. That goes a long way with me to have a car that has not been hit.
This Daytona has got everything going for it. 440, 4-speed.
Daytonas really should have 4 speeds in them because it just makes them feel like a race car, and that's what I like about this car.
In a great color and a stellar restoration. Does not get much better than this one.
The 70 Dodge Charger RT SE that's coming to the event is a gorgeous car. One, Survivor. What makes a Survivor so good? You're going to pay more for a Survivor. You are, but you're also going to get the feel of exactly the way the car was when it rolled out of the dealership.
It's got the V-Code engine. That tells us that's got the optional 440 6-pack. It's 390 horsepower with 3 big Holley two-barrel carburetors sitting on top of it.
I know we all like these Hemis, but I can tell you when one of those is tuned right, especially this one's a 410 Super Track Pack car, it will get with the program. It's sideways in every gear.
The originality and the condition of this car is extraordinary. 727 torque flight automatic, super track pack with the 410 gears and the big Dana rear end. But on top of that, it's got plenty of luxury options as well on it.
The leather interior, which still smells like leather in this car. Pedal dress up, hood turn signals, wood grain dash. The SE was more of a little gentleman's car to drive.
I think whoever ordered this car all the way back in 1970 decided not only did they want to go fast, but they wanted to go fast with class. In the Mopar world in 1970, a very special high-performance car was offered that encompassed a potent small block, the 1970 Plymouth AAR Cuda, and of course AAR standing for All American Racers, which is a racing team that Dan Gurney led during his time period, SCCA Trans Am Racing. This car was built really for one purpose, and that was to homologate, make legal a lot of the equipment on this car so that it could be legally raced. That high-winding 340 was a stout performer. It's 290 horsepower, 3 two-barrel carburetors, a 4-speed transmission. Well, that's just the hardware. This particular example, in a very rare color, limelight with the white interior, and maybe most astonishing of all, this car is in all original condition.
It came from a guy from British Columbia, and he was fanatical about keeping this car up. He told me the story. He quit driving it around 74. Put it on jack stands. These tires have never been off this car. It's the only AAR I've ever seen that's original, that the white interior has not yellowed and the hood has not bucked. And there's a good reason for that. It never saw sunlight. So it never got a chance to get heat, and that causes those issues on AARs. It ranks as one of the best, if not the best, I have ever owned.
So the end of the road, 1971, Charger, with that 426 Hemi, represents the end of arguably the most important muscle car engine of all time. Wrap it up in a package where this car is all original except for a quality repaint. It's a high option car, which is not typical for a Hemi, and it's a great color as well.
The interior of the car is mint, never touched. Undercarriage, never touched. The engine bay, never touched. It's a car that Stephen Giuliano owned for years.
The fact that this 71 Hemi Charger came out of the Stephen Giuliano collection says a lot, because not only one, but two different high-end collectors recognized just how special this car was. That's going to pay off on the auction block.
It's got great options: concealed headlights, the light package with the lights on the fenders, wood grain steering wheel, console, power windows. It's just got all of the good stuff that you want. I kept it for 22 years for a reason. It's that nice of a car. Another fun car for you to see is the red 72 Sunroof Charger.
440 cubic inches, that was the biggest engine that was available in 1972, and while power was down to 280 versus its peak of 375 in 1970, meant that performance was still alive, although it was a new world.
Yes, you've got some compression loss there, but the car still performs strong. I mean, we all think, well, it's not as good. No, you get in that 440 and go hit the pedal on it and see what happens.
What makes this particular car so special is the incredible amount of options it has. Power everything, including power windows. It's got air conditioning. Almost never seen sunroof.
Not often you see a sunroof in a Charger. In fact, in 71, they only put like 30-something of them, and in 72, very, very few more than that. It was just an unheard of option. Really cool to have today, though, because so few cars got them.
On top of that, it's got an AM/FM stereo radio with a cassette player, with the dictaphone, with the microphone. I mean, we see that from time to time, but it's super rare and a really unique, quirky part of Mopar history. So by 1974, we knew that things were winding down for the platforms that were established during the peak of the muscle car era, and for the Dodge Charger. Not a lot of these cars exist today.
This one here I bought in Carlisle a few years ago. A little lady came up to me and she was wanting to sell it, and they've had it all their lives, but it was time to sell it. It still has its original tires and wheels from that era because they kept them. They were so particular.
It is in original condition, and that includes down to the tires. It's also got a desirable optional 400 cubic inch engine versus a much more common 318. Even though it represents the end of this performance era, it's a significant car in its own right.
I get often asked, why am I letting any of my cars go for my collection? Well, if you find new caretakers for some of the cars every year or two, great, because it allows me to bring others in. And I've got my sights set on a few others right now that I'd like to have.
Buyers also know that it's been not only properly vetted and it's got the Wellborn stamp of approval, but that it has been loved and it's been preserved really for one purpose. And that was at some point to hand this car over to a new generation of collector. They want to make sure that they're bringing it to the right venue that's going to get worldwide attention for their inventory, for their cars.
Kissimmee's my favorite. It's just coming out first of the year. It's big. It's like a car show within an auction. People are friendly. You're going to meet a lot of people that you'll become friends with through the years, and you're going to meet a lot of people you've been friends with for a lot of years, because we're all in this thing together if we're car people.